An entitled mother breaks my friend's window while she's self-playing, and a lot happens. My college friend Emily called me recently to tell me something that happened like 15 minutes ago. Emily was alone in her apartment where she was on the ground level and had the window shades closed, but the window cracked open as she has told me that her central air is often broken and gets stuffy. She was having alone time and was new doing it, and she said she was being very quiet. When she hears the sound of her window squeak and this young boy's face pops in through the blinds and she screams. Emily is on the other side of the room and the kid pulls out a phone and takes a picture while she is recoiled and runs off. She told me initially she was shocked and pissed, but she's used to it as she works as an exotic dancer and has a plethora of other inappropriate conduct stories and just decides to stay out of it and not get messed up in whatever terrible adult parents that child. She told me after she started it again, she heard a scream of a woman outside. "No, that's illegal!" And what do you know? A few seconds later, and rapid banging on the door starts, and Emily just grabs a blanket to cover herself, goes into her bathroom. Her apartment's very, very small and essentially one room, so when what happens next happened, there wasn't much room for her to use. After prolonged banging on the door, the woman moves to the window and starts banging on that and yelling, "You cannot be indecent in front of children! This is illegal, and I will have you arrested, pedophile!" And things of that nature when, lo and behold, glass ain't that strong, and after a few colorful phrases, the woman's hand passes straight through the pane and shatters it. She stops for a second and then pokes her head in, first saying that, "This is not breaking property as you are the aggressor," and then she continues. Emily is very freaked out at this point and calls the cops while the woman is yelling. She told me the cops had to ask several times to repeat as the entitled mother was screaming things about abuse and how her poor baby will need therapy after what she showed him. They said a couple officers would be over there and she hung up. The entitled mother will not shut up and pulls out her phone and starts recording, telling her phone the story she created and informing the imaginary audience and how she's going to get Emily on a blacklist and calling her a molester. Now, Emily is a real strong lady in my opinion. She's had to deal with a lot of entitled people, and I have many stories starring humanity's most choice people, mostly nasty people, so she can be very calm and collected in these scenarios. She said she calmly walked over and tried to close the window and push the mother's head out. Her window is one of those ones with an upper and lower part, and she brought the upper one all the way down, which leaves maybe 6 to 7 inches of space at the bottom. The mother screams assault and tries to grab Emily, but only grabs the blanket she used to cover up and rips it off her. Entitled mother sliced her arm on the broken window, and she ended up taking the curtains down with her, so the window is unobstructed, and now Emily finds that some neighbors have gathered. Emily hops deeper into the apartment, into her kitchen, and calls me, telling me this all the while I hear in the background the familiar sounds of a horribly loud and obnoxious mother. I've worked a few retail jobs and have dealt with the worst of the worst, particularly pet owners. After a few minutes of monologue, there were distant sirens and she hung up, telling me she'd call back. She said she was nervous of what might happen, but ended it saying that the worst part of this was that this pig and her piglet couldn't give me 5 minutes to finish when I was in the goddamn middle of. Haven't heard much back yet, but she did text me about 10 minutes after. Can't talk much, looking good. Officer restrained mom. In the clear? I'm glad the dancer stood up for herself and called out the woman on her behavior. It's not okay to treat people like that. I really hope this doesn't end up going to court or anything serious, but if it does, I'll be rooting for you. The mother you came across seems like a real piece of work. Her and her child had no right to be looking through your window. However, maybe you should take a lesson from all this, and when you are having personal time, make sure there's no possible way you can be seen by anyone else, just to be safe. Karen ignores her emails for years and tries to sue me, which causes her to go bankrupt. I used to work in an office. What kind of work isn't particularly important to the story, so just picture a basic office job. Every January, HR would send an email to all employees with the employee handbook. This included job descriptions, office policies, etc. Every year since the PDF handbook had been established, it would be named with the year following it to establish it was different than the original and all other years. Any changes would have updated next to the section in the table of contents, so you could see what had changed from the previous year and familiarize yourself with anything new. Now with that background, we will introduce Karen. Karen had been with the company a pretty long time, about 10 years I believe. She was fine at her job, just fine. She would get things done, but not without making everyone else miserable in the process. She would ask questions that had already been answered, and basically just waste everyone's time for fun. She was just plain nasty to people, and tried as hard as she could to make everyone stay far away from her. The worst thing about her was she always seemed to be looking for a fight or looking for a reason to complain. She had threatened lawsuits a few times over any small thing, but would always get over it and drop it because she knew no laws had been broken, and it would never go anywhere. She'd comment on how she'd sue basically every business she ever went to because she could live off the settlement and retire early, over the smallest issue you can imagine. She did her job and we never had a valid reason to fire her, especially knowing how lawsuit happy she was. So she stayed. Karen's job description, as per the handbook, called for a bachelor's degree. Karen did not have a bachelor's degree, but had been hired prior to that being a requirement, so she was grandfathered in. One day, a position above her became open. A guy who we will call Terry had recently completed his master's degree after taking night classes for a few years, and since an internal promotion is typically better than an outside hire, he was chosen for the promotion. Terry had been at the company for about 4.5 years, and was well-liked and great at his job. The new job required a master's degree in its job description, and him being a recent grad, it was a perfect fit and everyone was happy for him. Everyone but Karen. Since she was constantly looking for something to sue about, she took it as a direct insult that she had not been considered for this promotion, that she was not at all qualified for. She immediately cried discrimination and told our boss her lawyer would be in touch. We were all perplexed, since it was very clear that this position required a master's degree, and given that she didn't even have a bachelor's degree, there's no way she could have been hired for the role. What we soon realized was that Karen had saved the original company handbook named Company Handbook, and had not bothered to open or save any new editions that were sent in the following 8 years. She just assumed no changes had been made, and it was just sent every year to ensure all employees had it. If she had bothered to open the file, she would have seen the sections that say updated in the table of contents. Since Karen cried lawsuit a lot, no one expected much of this since it was a ridiculous claim. But sure enough, Karen gives her resignation letter via email, and it is scathing, about how she can't bear to work in such a discriminatory environment that would only promote men. When any higher-ups try to speak to her about this and clear up the confusion, she basically tells them to fuck off and to read the damn email. I don't owe any more of an explanation. She basically goes full Karen. Not long after, a letter comes in from her lawyer asking for a settlement to avoid a discrimination case. What Karen hadn't realized was that our boss's sister-in-law owned a law firm. She didn't really take on clients herself anymore and just mostly managed the other lawyers of her firm. She was basically semi-retired. What this meant was she had plenty of time to review any letters from Karen's lawyer and advise us. Since Karen didn't bother to read any of the updated handbooks, she was unaware that this position had required a master's degree for many years now. I believe about 6 years. She supplied her lawyer with the original company handbook from 9 years ago, and he used that as a reference in his settlement demand. This is when we realized she hadn't read any new handbooks in years. Since Karen rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, boss's sister-in-law decided to personally take on the case. Every letter Karen's lawyer sent, she sent back one 3 times in length. Some of it wouldn't even really say anything, just wordiness. But it would certainly take Karen's lawyer a while to read it, and he did not come cheap. After several of these letters, they realized no settlement is going to happen. They want to take it to court. It's a pretty cut and dry case. Boss's sister-in-law shows evidence that Karen has received all updates via email. After the change was made and the handbook sent out, HR even sent an email to Karen specifically letting her know that she was grandfathered in and doesn't need to worry, to which Karen replied, "Okay, thank you," confirming receipt of it. The best part was when boss's SIL said that they couldn't break company rules to give Karen a job she was totally unqualified for while neglecting another employee who went above and beyond to get his master's degree to advance, as that would be unfair to all other employees. Karen now had a huge, seriously, huge bill from her lawyer for all of these letters and filing the case, etc. No job, no one she could list as a positive recommendation, and no degree. In the time she had been at the company, it had become the industry standard to require a bachelor's degree. So she was effectively shut out of her career. It'd also be hard to explain how you worked somewhere for a decade and don't have a letter of recommendation from anyone there, if she had only read her damn emails. I mean, what this sounds like was that Karen wasn't interested in the promotion, or really anything. She just wanted an excuse to sue and expected to live off settlement money. That's not a healthy way to live. Karen really needs some help. Today, I messed up by helping ruin my son's life. My son has been in college since last fall. Last November, my 16-year-old stepdaughter brought up allegations that my son had abused her repeatedly for several years. I confronted my son, and he categorically denied it. But I knew that even though he was my son, I could not defend him for such an awful act. My wife and I reported him to the authorities. My son was arrested in December and held in prison for several weeks because I refused to provide him bail money. He was eventually expelled from his Ivy League college. In the middle of January, my stepdaughter broke down and admitted she lied about everything. She had actually been having sex with her boyfriend and was scared the news would reach us. The charges were dismissed and my son was released immediately, but the damage was done. His first girlfriend from college ended things with him. The news spread about the allegations and all his childhood friends decided to just stay away from him even though I called each and every one of them personally. I called the school and explained the situation, and even though they sympathized, they said he needed to reapply for the next school year and go through the admissions process again. My son is understandably furious at us. He has moved back home and refuses to talk to me at all. Both my wife and I have apologized to him repeatedly. We have banned my stepdaughter from our home permanently, and she has been sent to live with her father in another state. My wife and I also agreed to completely disinherit her from our wills. It has been a very painful situation. All of us started therapy. The realization of how badly I ruined my son's life hit me when I picked up his first prescription of antidepressants today. I bawled my eyes out in the car. He's the pride and joy of my life. He's outgoing, funny, intelligent, and the kindest person I know. But when I handed him his medication, I could not even recognize him. He locks himself in his room, does not eat properly, and has lost several pounds so far. Whenever I try to talk to him, I just see the hate he has for me in his eyes. I don't know if I can ever get him to love me again. I know he is on here very often. T, if you are reading, I want to tell you how sorry your stepmom and I are. I promise I will get you into college again. I know I can't get you back the year you lost, but I will do everything in my power to make this right. Everything I have has always been for you. I hope you will give me a chance to fix this. I love you so much it hurts. I failed as a father, and I hope one day you will forgive me. Wow, what a story. OP, I made this little guide for you to get your family back in shape. Let's start with the basics. Have you tried talking to your son? You need to tell him how sorry you are and let him know that you will do everything in your power to make it up to him. Next, have you considered taking a step back from being involved in his life? It might help if he had some space from all this drama. You should also consider what would be best for your family as a whole. Have you thought about getting counseling? It seems like everyone needs some right now. If not, maybe just try to be there for each other and talk things out. Am I the jerk for wanting to keep bees even though my new neighbor's son is highly allergic to them? I've been keeping bees as a hobby for 6 years now. I have 4 hives in my suburban backyard along with a large garden. My hives are all properly registered and legal to keep in my town as of right now. The problem is that my new neighbors have asked me to get rid of my bees. They purchased the house and moved in over the winter and hadn't noticed my girls until this spring. Apparently, their son is highly allergic to bee stings. He has been hospitalized more than once and has to carry an EpiPen. They asked nicely but seemed a little upset when I said I don't think I could do that. They didn't push the issue with me further, but I saw a rant on the next door that I'm sure was written by them. Sometime after that, some of the bee-hating next-door people went to our town board and tried to get beekeeping outlawed in our town. Luckily, it didn't pass, and they had mentioned in the minutes that current beekeepers would have to be grandfathered in if it did. Because of that, I'm even more worried about giving it up in case they do bring this legislation up again. If I have active hives, I can keep them. My neighbors and I aren't really on speaking terms now. Am I the jerk for wanting to keep doing my hobby? I'm not a beekeeper, but I really think you should do what your neighbors want. They have the reasons for wanting you to get rid of the bees, and that's more important than your hobbies. I mean, just think about it. If their son ever got stung by one of the bees while they were outside playing or something, they could die. It would be horrible. It would be like one of those stories on the news where a dog attacks someone and they die. I can't imagine what it would be like if that happened to my dog. I messed up after getting high with my fiancé. Last night, I finally managed to convince my fiancé to smoke weed with me. She's always been anti-420, but now that we're just a few weeks away from getting married and being all grown up and shit, she's gone full yellow. Fast forward to me seeing my fiancé high for the first time. She became extremely relaxed and talkative. It was cute at first, listening to her go on and on about life and love, but then shit kind of got specific. She mentioned how she never expected to be with someone like me. I didn't even have to encourage her to explain because of the floodgates were already wide open. All those details spilled out without any frickin' filter. This is what I learned from my fiancé that I never knew before. 1. Most of her past relationships ended because she was notoriously promiscuous. 2. As per number 1, one of those relationships came to an end after she cheated on her boyfriend by hooking up with his younger brother, while also cheating on the damn brother with his best friend, who just so happened to be the same ex. 3. I'm the first guy she's had to do the fake finish thing with. Apparently, all her exes pushed all the right buttons, whereas I don't. 4. My asthma is a turnoff when it comes to sex because she feels like she needs to hold back so that I don't get too excited and die. 5. All her exes had horse dongs. Of course they did. I'm her first average. Those were some of the key points. I was too traumatized to register whatever else she said afterwards. I don't think I blinked for the rest of the evening. The original poster gave an update. Even though I knew what my fiancé said would haunt me forever, I was willing to bury it in the back of my mind and pretend like last night never even happened. However, my fiancé wanted to talk, so we did. It was brutal. She said my mom was right about her being wrong for me. Long story short, all this shit was building up to her admitting she'd been sending nudes to one of her horse dong exes, a frickin' Chad. I'm emotionally destroyed. It doesn't feel real yet, so I have trouble accepting it's over. But it is. Guess I'm returning that ring and getting a PS5. Appreciate all the advice. It's hard to even imagine what you must be going through right now. I'm so sorry you had to find out about this stuff from your fiancé. I mean, you should have known about her past before getting married, but it still sucks that she was willing to let you know all of this after getting engaged. It doesn't matter if it's the end of the world for you right now, OP. You're still a good person, and there are other fish in the sea. Maybe you'll get remarried one day and it'll work out better than with your ex-fiancé. There's some great women out there. Anyway, I hope things start looking up for you soon. Am I the jerk for refusing to help housework because it's my wife's job? For context, my wife is a 25-year-old female, and I'm a 27-year-old male. We have been married for 3 years. We have a 2-year-old daughter and live in a 2-bedroom apartment, which isn't very big. Outside of this argument, we have a solid relationship and I love her very much. Ever since our daughter was born, my wife has decided to be a stay-at-home mom until she starts kindergarten. While surviving without her paycheck is very difficult considering the area we live in, she was adamant that this would be best for our daughter, as she had read developmental books saying that children should spend their fundamental development years with their mothers. As a result of this, I'm the sole breadwinner and I work 2 jobs to support us, one of which is a manual labor job. When I come home from work, I'm exhausted, and I just want there to be dinner on the table and for the house to be clean. This has been our arrangement since our daughter has been born. While we share childcare, she is responsible for all other household duties. Lately, my wife has admitted that she's resentful of the fact that I don't help out more at home. While I'm constantly stressed and tired from work, she expects me to share the household responsibilities as well, such as cooking a few times a week, washing the dishes while she cooks, doing the grocery shopping with the list, babysitting for full evenings while she goes out with friends, and so on. I myself don't have the pleasure of going out drinking with friends either, and her request seems unfair. She has all day to do these things and they are her job. I told her how I felt about it, and now she's giving me the cold shoulder, complaining how it's because I have a toxic masculinity view of household duties. This isn't true. If the roles were reversed, and she was the one constantly working, I wouldn't dream of asking her to help with running the household on top of that. Am I the jerk, or is she being the unreasonable one? I seriously don't see what I've done wrong here. It's been a long time since I've heard one like this. I'm not sure what to say other than that it's a very tough situation for you. On the one hand, your wife has been the primary caregiver for your daughter for 2 years now, which is no small task. It sounds like she's feeling overwhelmed by this responsibility, and that it has taken its toll on her mental health. At the same time, it's more than fair for you to expect to be able to come home and relax after working long hours. You are the one who's providing income for your family, and she has to respect that. Am I the jerk for telling my husband to rehome his cat? My husband and I have been living together for a year. When we moved in together, I brought my 3-year-old American bully, while he brought his 18-year-old cat. We tried to introduce them to one another by initially separating them, then by introducing them to each other's smells, followed by letting them see each other whilst at a safe distance. They appeared to get along, but after a day, the cat began making its dislike for the dog very clear. In response to this, we've taken to keeping the cat and dog separated by gates when there is no one around to supervise them. When we're around, we splash them with a small amount of water if the cat begins to fight with the dog, which worked for a while until recently, when the cat became relentless in its efforts to go after the dog, even after being splashed with water. As such, we took the cat to our local vet to assess it for any issues. The vet told us that he's perfectly healthy. Another issue that we have to consider is that I'm pregnant. While I'm not saying that the cat would definitely be nasty toward my baby, the way it has acted toward my dog has caused me to worry. I brought up the idea of taking the cat to a cat sanctuary, where it would hopefully be able to find a new home, in a relaxing environment and without fear of being euthanized, since we can't take it to any family members, since his family is refusing to have the cat, and my family is in the UK. We argued virtually non-stop about this for days, until my husband finally agreed to take his cat to said cat sanctuary. However, he's still pretty upset with me. I feel really bad for my husband. However, I do feel like it was the right decision, not only for the dog, but our future baby. Am I the jerk? I do feel really bad for your husband and his cat. I can't believe how much time you spent arguing about this. I'm sorry that he feels upset with you, but I think it's a good idea to take the cat to a sanctuary. It sounds like it would be better off there than in your home. It's impossible to keep them separated at all times, whilst letting them be pets and enjoy their freedom. And as it's the cat who has the issue, I think it makes most sense that he's the one who should go. If you enjoyed these stories, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell. Check out the other videos on your screen right now. Otherwise, you're definitely the jerk.